Welcome back, and here is the part two of the Royal Dromai deck profile. I'm going to be talking about the different card options that I was thinking about when I deck built this for the calling, and just kind of the decisions I made of a couple of the things and some choices for you guys going forward if you want to tinker with the list a little bit. So jumping right into it, the equipment. The only other two pieces of equipment I was really considering was the two pieces of arcane damage prevention that I could have gone with. I ended up going with silent stilettos. I really wanted to try to go with Crown of Reflections if I could, because it would have given me like a consolidation of Mage Master Boots plus Stilettos, because I can use this for my AB, but I can also use this to flash in Passing Mirage by sacking a Burn Them All, letting me still do the instant speed passing, or the passing with Go Again, if you would. It's not Go Again, but with this it'd be instant speed. But it's letting me do the passing Ghostly Touch combo still. But I did really value the Crown of Providence block versus Guardian to deal with Command and Conquers, so I stayed with that. I couldn't figure out a way to fit it in cleanly, so I ended up not going with that, but that is something to consider if you don't feel like you need the Crown of Providence. And then Silken, I was really torn between this, the AB piece, or Iron Raw. I ended up going with the Iron Raw and the AB and just shaved a card from the main board to fit both in, but this does consolidate that down quite a bit. I found that I needed the Iron Raw quite a bit versus Briar and some other aggro decks like that, so I don't get ganked by like a Snatch or something. But reasonable cards to put in the list. Now, since you're Royal, you can play Cash In. I found that I didn't really need it since I wanted to actually crack the gold manually most of the time, so I didn't really want this. But if, let's say, I'm Royal in every matchup, there's a consideration for playing this, just so that way you can utilize the gold if you didn't need the Ash in like a matchup that you get a lot of Ash in. Just Pot of Greed's good. Speaking of Pot of Greed, Tome of Fiendel, better Pot of Greed, unless you gain life on top of that. This was in my list right up until the calling. I found that it was falling off quite a bit because I added in all of the aggro cards and I cut a lot of blues from the list in most matchups. But if I were to change the deck and make it so I'm mainboarding more blues, like let's say I'm back on Necria or something like that and I do want some more blues to actually cast it, this does go back up. This card wins the game on the spot against a lot of decks, and it really helps make your Icelander matchup quite comfy because just life gain's really good into Icelander, plus it's just another yellow to pitch against them. But the block to I have to wait around to do it, the fact that I have to set it, there's just a lot of issues with it and causing it to be a liability in a lot of matchups, so I ended up cutting it from the list. But I'm strongly considering adding it back in just because of the raw power of the card. And it's really cute with Flame Call Awakening. You can go zero cost starter, Flame Call, pick up the Phoenix Flame, crack Mage, pitch the Phoenix Flame to the Furnace, generating 2 resources and an Ash. Use one of it on Mage Master Boots, use the other on Tome, draw 2 cards, gain at least 2 life, maybe 3 if you still had another card in hand, and then just continue playing cards. It's just a really good value play, so worth re-putting back in the deck. Some defensive options to consider. Just defense reaction style things. If you feel like you really need to deal with Dominate, this really goes up in value, or Command and Conquer, or Arcane Damage. Let's say the meta shifted to Bravo and all Icelanders. This gets a lot more value. But I wasn't necessarily targeting those decks, and I felt like my matchup was pretty good into them anyway, so I didn't really want this. If I feel like I just need even more 0 for 4 D-reacts, I was considering putting this back in the deck just to kind of increase my effective life total over the game against Briar and things like that. But I was trying to enact a more proactive game plan into them, so I didn't really want that. And it's just good into the decks like Fi and stuff like that. It can be a liability, though, because it is a yellow, and if you have a board state and they go for your dragons instead, you can't really do a whole lot with this. And a lot of those decks will push their small things into your dragons anyways. Like Rosetta is just going to go into your dragon 90% of the time, like an Ashwing or something. So it can be hard to use this. I think you need to adjust your game plan into those matchups where you're less focused on low-to-the-ground dragons, potentially. But it's worth considering. And then some of the blues that I was considering. So we've got our 2 for 6s, really good with the Phoenix Flame, Flame Claw package. It lets us just pitch to Furnace, throw 6 at them afterwards, letting you turn a red plus your Flame Call into a 3-card 9, which is on rate, but it also made you 2 Ash and potentially did other things as well that round. So it's just like a fine usage of a blue because, sometimes you're not happy casting your blues. Kind of on that same vein of thought, another 2 costs that you can play. It's just another on hit if you just need to present a million on hits versus decks to make them block. This round's on me if you're trying to deal with 5, though again, liability of they may be going for dragons instead of face, and if they go for dragons, you don't get value out of this. Kind of a risky card to play sometimes, but it is a blue block 3, it's a nice floor. Semblance if you just need that extra tech card versus Guardian. I ended up going with Remembrance over this, but there's a consideration of, switching that back. It's just like a toolbox card versus that kind of strategy. And then Sweeping Blow, card I'm actually considering putting back in right now because of the games that I lost were due to not drawing any of my Ash generation. I'm not excited casting this card ever. It's probably the worst card in the deck. But if it's the difference between casting the worst card in your deck and getting to play the game, or the game ended instantly because you just never found Ash, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to stay in the game. And then we have our Royal package, because, we're Royal. I don't think that these cards are really what we're trying to do in the deck. These I just don't think are very good. The making extra gold and stuff really doesn't have much value for the deck, and the name a card, maybe that comes up at some point in the future, so it's like something to keep in mind. But as it stands right now, that doesn't really have much value against anything right now. The Warhorn, though, I think is a card worth considering. It, again, fits that cost curve of pitching your Phoenix Flame to make 2 and then cast this. It kind of plays with your Furnace nicely. And then against decks like Icelander, Dash, and other things like that, other just permanent-based decks, it can be really nice to get stuff off the board. I don't really like this versus Icelander with us losing, I believe Hypothermia was one of the targets for it. So, that's not great. And honestly, if they play a Hypothermia against you, it's usually at instant speed stealing your action point, meaning it's too late to even do this to get rid of it. I'm not looking to get rid of Frostbites with this. The real use case is to get rid of Frost Hex against Icelander. And then against Dash, if, let's say, Dash becomes really popular, especially Tree Frog Dash, this card's insane against them. You just get rid of their items and they can't win the game anymore. And it can make it really obnoxious at getting rid of your dragons, too. Because maybe you're in that mid-game where they're still fighting over stuff. If you get rid of one of their only items, they just can't clear anymore. But kind of in a similar vein to that for getting rid of annoying things that ice can present to you. There's Thaw. That's another consideration. You don't have to be Royal to play this, but it is something that just for free lets you do that, and there's not a lot of counterplay to it, but I don't like this card either. I just don't think any of these are really viable right now. I think the only thing really, again, is if Dash gets really popular. And then we have some of the aggressive cards that we can play in the deck. We've got our 1-for-5s. I don't really like these right now with the low blue count in most of the matchups. I think where I'm looking to play these is when I'm playing more blues for, again, Necria and things like that, and I can go pitch a blue, play a 1-for-5, and then play a 2-cost card that I have in the list because I'm planning my cost curve around these blues. Another 1-cost card that we have that we can put in is the Miraging Metamorph, just a 1-for-7. It's just good. Think of it as an E-Strike with only one mode, but then still makes an Ash for you. I ended up not going with this because I really didn't want more cards with Phantasm in the list. I really wanted to fill out my curve with stuff that didn't have Phantasm to push through damage, and then throw my Phantasm stuff at the end of the chain, mostly dragons. But it almost made the cut of my list, so definitely worth considering. And we have some annoying 2-cost cards. Emerald, same idea as the Metamorph, just a big number on a card. Erase Face, it's a meta-specific thing. Let's say there's a lot of Viscerai and Dash in the meta. Can be good against Icelander. This has a lot of text against a lot of things. It's just not something that I was looking to play this past weekend, so consider it in the future. It kind of fills that same slot as an E-Strike, Command and Conquer, other things like that, where you're just some sort of role filler in the list. Nourishing Emptiness. This is something that Maro is playing. Kind of cute. You can, just normally play the card and get value out of it. But something else you can do is make sure that all of your blues are not attacks, and then use your Burn Them Alls to remove all of the attacks from your graveyard, so these will continue to have text throughout the game. I think that's really cute. I don't know where I'm specifically looking to do that, where it's insane. I think it's I think it's just cute. It's something that I needed to explore a little bit more, but worth noting. And then Red Hot. This is just an incredible racing piece. A lot of value in this card. When you play it, usually it's a 2 for 8. So that's incredibly good. We take those. We like our Wounding Bulls, and it can go up from there. And the thing that you're looking to do with this most often is play it with a Rake the Embers. You go pitch a red, play Rake, swing, 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 and then Furnace, play this. It's going to see the 3 Draconics before this, and then this is going to come in. It's going to see itself. You're going to flip over 4 cards, and you're going to come in for 4, plus another 4, so that's 8, 9, 10, 11 from the Ashwings. So that was a 4-card 11, which is a little below rate, but we get 3 Ashwings out of the deal too, so we're pretty happy about that, especially if the table or opponent wastes a ton of time dealing with them. It's decent value. I think this really excels if you're trying to race certain decks and they're light on poppers, because like the real issue with this is if they pop you in the middle of your chain, this just doesn't do anything. And outside of Rake, you don't really have a lot of ways to like guarantee that rupture. It's a lot of like, I'm going to present a few things in a round, not 4 things in a round, so it can be kind of tough to actually cast that for value anyways. The floor at least is a block 3, and you can just kind of wait. Eventually you'll get value. Oh, and then one other aggro piece is just the other 0 for 4 go-agains. This was originally in my list, and I cut it because there's a lot of times where I was ahead and it just lost text, especially against Guardian. And this, if you have the extra Ash, I think this is good. I think that you can't add this in without another Ash generation engine in the deck, but it's an insane card. It's pretty much a 0 for 5, assuming they deal with the Ashwing immediately for exact damage. And frequently it's going to be more than that if they attack the Ashwing, assuming it doesn't get popped. Dragon Math is kind of weird with popping. And then we have the Dragons and then the Ash to go with them. I ended up not playing the Legendaries or the 3-cost Dragons or the Ash to go with them. Glare. Sorry about that. First of all, I think the Ash is really interesting. I think that it's for like a really specific game plan against certain decks. Where I really liked it was playing the Vincerakai one against Guardian and trying to set up a board state where I have like 2 of these in play, and I pitch stack a Vincerakai with a blue multiple times, and then I have a round where I go Vincerakai with no Phantasm, and I already tabled some stuff in the previous round. Hopefully it was right after I did like a Dromai Miragai passing round where I just like vomited a bunch of stuff. They go to their round, hammer one of them, come back to my round, Vincerakai, swing with Dromai, no Phantasm, swing with some other stuff, swing with the 2 Vincerakais, no Phantasm, and you just overwhelm them with way too much. And you can just run away with the game from there, and even if you don't win off of this play, you just get in so much chip damage that it makes it so you don't really need much to cross the finish line anymore. Almost anything can kill them now. So I really liked it for that. I didn't really like the rest for anything, really. I don't want to play these against any other deck. They're just kind of mediocre. I'd rather just play more cards instead of wasting a card on an Ash. And then the Legendary Dragons, again, the low blue count, I'm not... that's the real problem with these. I was on a low blue, high red count, so it's really rough casting these. The only scenario that I'm really casting these is when I'm boarding in extra blues for certain decks. Or something cute you can do is you go crack your gold, and then you go play a 0 cost of some sort, assuming you pitch 2 reds to the gold. And then you Furnace, pitch a red. It's going to see the 3 reds in the pitch, making 3, letting you play the Necria off of 1 red. Or you can do a Flamecall Awakening similar line where, let's say you go pitch a card, play 1 cost like a Dragon or something like a Kyloria, play the Flamecall, pitch another red, pick up the Phoenix Flame, pitch the Phoenix Flame to Furnace. It's going to make 3, letting you play the Necria. This still works even if you didn't play the 1-cost Dragon, though, assuming you have a 5-card hand. Like, this only works off of a 5. You same thing, you play a 0 cost, you play the Flame Call, you pick up the Phoenix Flame, you Furnace the Phoenix Flame, making 2 resources, you just have an extra card in your hand, so you just normally pitch that into the Necria. You're like theoretically down a resource or a card on that, of like kind of however you want to look at it, but it is a play you can make to physically cast the card. So, like, there's ways around it. I just really didn't want to do that without reliable ways to cast it. I don't want to set it in Arsenal and then it just rots there for the rest of the game. And especially where we're not Crown of Providence in every matchup, that's really risky throwing a card in Arsenal with no way to get rid of it. And same idea with the big dumb idiot dragons that are a million mana. It's just like, how am I ever casting these? And like, I really only even like Optimi against Guardian, where I'm like third cycling it for lethal damage. Like, this arcane exactly kills you. That very rarely happens anyways. Usually I'm killing them with other means. If this is my like fifth backup win condition, this game didn't go right. And maybe I could have just played different cards in the list so I didn't have to be at that point where I'm thinking about killing someone with an Optimi. Yeah, it's just so rough casting these. And like the Tumulti, a lot of people started playing AB2 in the matchups that like I care about Tumulti playing to kill AB. So it just lost value there. Like, what am I gonna remembrance this back in to kill both of their AB? That's so cursed. So I'd rather just not rely on that and just, you know, play my Burn the Malls and things like that and just be like, whatever, just give me a card. You're wasting a card to stop arcane damage, so I'm still happy with that. And my game plan is now to strip multiple cards from you, so you can't mount anything back at me and can't efficiently clear my board. So that's it for cards I was considering for the calling. I'm planning on doing a sideboard guide next, and then at some point soon, I would like to make a primer on Dromai talking about all of the different cards that you can play in her, not just the ones I was considering this weekend. So if there's anything that I didn't mention here, feel free to ask in the comments. I will probably just consider that for my primer videos coming up in the future and not directly respond to you there, because I'm going to want to give a more thought-out response in just a quick comment section thing. But yeah, thank you so much for the support. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.